It's lovely to have you here. It's really nice to spend time with you in Jamaica. Ed is the Executive Director of Care of Creation, and it's not just a title, but you are one of those activists around creation care. So thank you ever so much for being here.
Well, thank you. I'm not a scientist, but I understand that the technical chemical definition of a catalyst is a substance that encourages a reaction without necessarily taking part in it. Am I correct, Bob? Yeah. So, in some ways, that probably does fit how I feel about this, because we've plugged in a couple of things here and there and said, I wonder if this will work, I wonder if that'll work, and 4 or 5 years later we look back and say, wow, it works. And Dave Lucas has been mentioned several times, and will be again, but there are, no one is more surprised than he and I that things have been happening the way they are. I don't want to take a lot of time here, but there are a couple of things I feel I do want to say. First, I want to bring you greetings from the church and the creation care community in the U.S., and I can add to that the creation care community in Singapore and the Philippines and Kenya and the Dominican Republic. We have, as of this day, a genuine global creation care movement with people in all of these different places who are actively working to care for God's creation in their own context, and we're very excited about that. So my greetings to you on behalf of all of them. Loss and I have been talking about the fact that there's a big Lausanne meeting for younger leaders happening in Indonesia in August, and he wants to launch this book all over again there. So, so we'll see if we can do that as well. I also want to bring you greetings from Sir John Houghton. I had been hoping to visit him while I was here for this short time, but it wasn't practical to go all the way out to the far side of Wales to see him. So we had a very nice conversation by phone, and he wanted to be sure that I mentioned his greetings to you. He has a chapter in this book. It may well be one of the last formal things he will have written. He is really not writing anymore, and I'm not sure that his mind is quite as deteriorated as he claims it has. I think as much as he thinks he's forgotten, he still knows more than I have ever learned. But even so, he's slowing down a lot. He's not traveling much. I don't know that he's accepting many visitors, but he is still very up to date on climate news, on what's happening around the world, very concerned about the rest of us and what we're going to do with sort of the guideline that he and others have given him for where the world is going to go. So we can thank God for him, and perhaps people like him that are having to step aside, concentrate on carrying on the work. I am, at heart, basically a preacher, so I have 3 things I want to say to you. But they're going to be brief because Chris is the real preacher tonight. I don't want to take his time away. Number 1, I think we're here to celebrate this book as a significant event in itself. Anytime you produce a book from many authors that takes 2 or 3 years to produce, you're not sure what the final result is going to look like. And I will be honest, I knew it was coming, I was excited it was going to come, but part of my brain was saying, but is it really good? Will people really make it worthwhile? Will people see that this is something worthwhile, or will it just be one more of those books that conferences produce and that's the end of it? I've been very encouraged with the response from the publishers who said this is wonderful, one of the best things we've done for people in Lausanne. They said, in effect, this is a new standard we're setting for Lausanne publications. They even said, Lausanne doesn't launch books, so we want to see how this book launch goes. Maybe we'll use this as models for others. Bob and Colin, a salute to you again for the work that you did. I think it's wonderful. Now, the book itself, I'd love to take you through all 19 chapters, 30 seconds each, but then there really wouldn't be enough time. So my own personal highlights, perhaps I can encourage you to actually get a copy by the end of the evening if you have not yet. Number 1, the chapter that Dave Lucas has given us on how creation care and evangelicalism fit together. Dave goes through a relatively recent definition of evangelicalism as biblicism, conversionism, crucicentrism, and activism, and and shows how each one of these connect with the creation care message in a very significant way. Sam Berry's historical review is superb and is something that everyone should have. It is so easy for us in an activist-type movement to lose sight of even recent history. And Sam gives us a very good timeline of significant documents and meetings and events and people who made contributions right through from the very beginning of church history up to the present day. In fact, we almost stopped the presses and were managed just in time to insert a paragraph on the Pope's encyclical, because we figured this is coming out in 2016. If we don't include a comment on that, even though the book had already been long finished, that was necessary. But finally, I think you should all look at Ken Nonigan's final chapter. It's not numbered, it's the conclusion. Ken is a prominent theologian. Ken is a prominent theologian. I think that was a midnight. Prominent theologian from India. In fact, he's a man of many, many talents. He's the one that gave us the three-part formula that structures the book: God's Word theology, God's world science, and God's work, our response to the problem. Ken has written in that final chapter an exploration of how we need not only to have integral mission, but we need to have integral theology, that the integration of God's world and ecology is a model for how we should do theology, so all the parts fit together. Now, I'm not going to try to capture his argument and just to share with you. It's worth reading, and I think you should. That's number one. The book is worthwhile all by itself. But this book is also unique in that it is part of a three-part strategy to truly mobilize the church around the world for creation care. You've heard numerous references already to the Jamaica consultation that we held in 2012. Out of Jamaica, the Lausanne movement wanted one thing: they wanted a book. So we got the book finally. When we arrived in Jamaica, the participants almost immediately started saying, what about a conference statement? Are we going to have a conference statement? We have to do something with all this brain power that's gathered here. And so the result of the conference statement that we produced is the Jamaica call to action that you have on your chair. I hope that you'll take time to read that. It's on the web in 6 languages. You can go on the web and sign your own name, get your church or your mission organization to sign their name. Don't have time to go through the details, but I think it's a significant conference statement that we have not allowed to die, and I don't intend to let it die. So everywhere I go, people hear about the Jamaica call to action. The third thing that has come out of the Jamaica consultation has been a global campaign for creation care in the gospel. Those of us who gathered in Jamaica said if this is worth doing once here, it's worth doing for the church around the world. This has resulted in a conference in Southeast Asia, in Manila, where 9 countries were represented in March 2014. Last year we did 4 additional conferences in East Africa, in Latin America, in North America, and in West Africa. This year we're going to be in September in South Asia for Nepal, Pakistan, India, Bangladesh, Sri Lanka, and I'm pretty sure we have some people from Afghanistan as well. And in November 7 to 10, we will be in Europe. This campaign is coming to Spain for a 4-day conference. Dave Bookless, raise your hand, Dave, is the one who's coordinating it, and we can't overwhelm the conference with people from Britain, but there are a few slots. And especially those of you who are involved either in creation care work or who are scientists working in this area, we'd love to have you talk to Dave about joining, or even bringing your pastor or some church leader types that you know to be part of that. So that's number 2, is global campaign. We have 2 more years of it and expect that by then we will have covered about 100 countries around the world. We're very excited about what God has done. Which leads me to my third thing. The book is not only worthwhile in and of itself, and as part of a 3-part strategy to reach the entire global church with this message, but I think it has to be said because there's a danger for this to start to sound self-serving. that what we are witnessing, I believe, and I'm convinced, is a true movement of God. Now, I arrived here on Wednesday, and I feel like I've been meeting with people nonstop for the entire time I've been here. It's a good thing a few of you weren't available to meet with me. I don't know when I thought I would have fitted in. But on Saturday, I spent out in the countryside with Martin and Margot Hudson. Margot and I in particular had Martin too, but what struck me in looking back over the conversation was we were both sharing how we had come to our convictions about creation care, and that we had come to exactly the same convictions from exactly the same verses of the Bible, without ever having known each other or having any common teachers. And this is, Dave Bookless could probably say the same thing, and many others of us. I find people all over the world. The Holy Spirit is speaking to this person and these people, and He's saying the same thing. God is doing something in His church. I've likened it to a number of different things. Right now I can think of it in terms perhaps of similar to the way the message of the gospel of grace came to the church during the time of the Reformation. To Martin Luther here, to John Calvin there, to other people here and there. It's like the Spirit was beginning to wake the church up. I think this is happening. This is not a Lausanne thing. It's not an Arasha thing. It's not a Care Creation thing. It's the Spirit of God doing this. And so I close with a verse that is maybe slightly out of context the way Jesus used it, but I think is appropriate. The Lord has done this. It is marvelous in our eyes. So I appreciate the encouragements and commendations, but the glory truly goes to God. And if